Going through my divorce, after the divorce, and even quite a few years later, I wasn't sleeping great. And I hear that from many of my clients as well. There's so much going on emotionally and practically. So I want to ask you, why is sleep so often one of the first things to disappear when life gets that intense, such as divorce or any type of crisis?
It takes a long time to make change it to get your sleep like you want, but it does take a long time to disrupt it. The brain doesn't know a good habit from a bad habit. It just knows the habit, and it does what you tell it to do. And you tell it to do what it does, always. There's a physiological reason we sort of get roused around 3 o'clock. And there's a reason for it. When you go to sleep at, let's say, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you're starting to go through your sleep cycles, as you sleep, your temperature elevates as you're laying in bed. Okay, so your body temperature elevates. And it's about 3 o'clock, 2 to 3 o'clock, that the body temperature maximizes its temperature.
Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. Hi, I'm Karen Oman, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I draw on years of personal and professional experience to guide you through the challenges of your divorce. Together, with our expert guests, we'll equip you with the clarity, resilience, and tools to take charge and move forward with confidence. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many different facets of divorce. Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. I'm your host, Karen Oman, co-founder of the Divorce Workshop. Today we're going to talk about why you can't sleep after divorce and what actually helps. Our expert guest today is Dr. Stephen Todd. Dr. Stephen is a doctor in dentistry, a board-certified oral implantologist, a dental anesthesiologist with a master's in regenerative medicine, a U.S. veteran and former field dental surgeon. He now focuses on integrative sleep medicine and wellness, combining over 35 years of experience with deep knowledge of hemp-based and natural therapies. Dr. Todd is also an international speaker, an author of the Hemp Healthcare Initiative. He lives in Perdido Key, Florida, with his wife of 45 years, Jenny. Welcome, Dr. Stephen Todd, to the Just Separated podcast.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and see if we can help some people.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you because to be honest, when I first connected with you, I said this would be a great to have on the podcast, your wisdom and your experience, and you're full of so much education too, because sleep is such a big issue. And I'm going to go back to my own experience with divorce, going through my divorce, after the divorce, and even quite a few years later, I wasn't sleeping great. And I hear that from many of my clients as well. There's so much going on emotionally and practically. So I want to ask you, why is sleep so often one of the first things to disappear when life gets that intense, such as divorce or any type of crisis?
Well, that's a really good way to start the conversation. First of all, realize that sleep is necessary. It is a part of life. We have to have it. Technically, you need 6 to 8 hours of consistent sleep. It can be 6 for some people, 8 for others, but that's not me saying that. That's how we're built as humans. We need 6 to 8 hours of solid sleep. However, today's world, maybe to help make sure I'm answering the questions, okay, as we talk, because I'll chat about it. But as you go through life, and sleep is, everybody knows they have to have sleep, but it is one of the first things to go when you're stressed. When you're stressed, one of the first things to do is mess with your sleep cycles and the way you sleep. Or maybe you go to bed too late, or maybe you start staying up later than you did because you've got some change in your life. Changes are very, say it another way, sleep is very habitual. So we have learned how to sleep through our life, what makes us comfy, pulling the covers up and snuggling in bed and doing certain things to get comfortable to go to sleep. And those things get disrupted. The snuggly, good things that you like get disrupted because maybe you're not even in the same bed you were, right? That's a change. Maybe you're not even using the same pillow. Maybe the pillows got thrown at you and you're gone, right? I mean, these are things that happen. And those are major changes, even though they don't seem major to the person, to the client, to you, they are major because they're directly affecting your habitual nature of sleep. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they're easy to disrupt, meaning that it takes a long time to make change it to get your sleep like you want, but it doesn't take a long time to disrupt it.
Yeah, so that would make sense that why people who are going through a relationship breakup or a
Mm-hmm.
divorce, their routine has been all
Right.
right.
It's right.
So
You know that your
yeah.
routine, right? Let's talk about your routine. If you want to, your routine was totally discombobulated, um, totally disrupted, right? And so here's your life in topsy turmoil, or anyone's life, and they're expected to, you still need the sleep. That doesn't go away. That doesn't change. It doesn't change because you change. That is a physiological requirement of life. Is sleeping. Sleeping is, again, it's job one. It becomes before eating and becomes before drinking. And so, and the reason is if you don't get enough sleep in that monophasic sleep, 6 to 8 hours, and what happens is you don't make good judgment calls toward what to eat or what to drink or what to do, right? Because you get confused. Your decision making goes down a lot. For every hour and a half that you short sleep, 6 to 8 hours, you lose about 2 hours of cognitive puzzle making ability.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So when you shortchange your sleep, and then the next day, let's say that I call it short sleeping. When you short sleep and you do it on purpose, or maybe you do it because you've got a racing mind, then the next day or next 2 days, it doesn't. It's not a you don't catch up. You lost that hour and a half. It's gone. You never get it back. You can't go 8 hours the next night and get that hour and a half back. It's not banked. Sleep is not debt banked. So the cognitive ability of people, once they get these changes occurring, then they start short sleeping. What happens to the ability to make good quality decisions in high stress situations the next day, the next 2, the next 3, the next 4, the next week, the next year. So the confusion really sets in. Now, this is not a carte blanche, doesn't apply to everybody, because some people can manage stress better than others, right? Some people are very, they just can handle stress. They say they can, but if they're short sleeping, they're not. But however, to saying that, there are some people who can push themselves, as we can all do as humans. We can push ourselves to go on 4 hours sleep for a while and think we're doing okay. We can actually process that information, rationalize it, and justify it. And by doing that, we say it's okay. Physiologically, it's not okay. But as humans, we are tough. We're tough. We're made to be pretty tough. My wife is tougher than I am, okay, by a long shot. Women are tougher generally in these kind of environments than men. But, the changes that occur with people in their sleeping habits, most of the time are by choice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you make changes in habits by changing the habits.
Okay, gotcha.
The brain doesn't know a good habit from a bad habit. It just knows the habit. And it does what you tell it to do. And you tell it to do what it does. Always.
So the big question here then, Dr. Todd, is how do you, when you're going through these crises of
Mm-hmm.
divorce and even a breakup or whatever crisis really,
Mm-hmm.
how do you how do you break that habit then? Like if you know you're going through you're waking up at 3 a.m. all upset. So how do you break some of these habits that we've formed,
The wrong habits that are
the wrong
coming, the
ones?
wrong
Yeah.
ones that are coming at you because, you're choosing to stay up at this and that. Now, let's talk about getting up at 3 o'clock, 'cause that's a pretty good analogy. A lot of people do that. And there's a physiological reason we sort of get roused around 3 o'clock. And there's a reason for it. When you go to sleep at, let's say, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you're starting to go through your sleep cycles, as you sleep, your temperature elevates as you're laying in bed. Okay, so your body temperature elevates. And it's about 3 o'clock, 2 to 3 o'clock, that the body temperature maximizes its temperature. And people get uncomfortable. So some people just get up. Some people put a leg out of the cover to cool down. Some people strip off the covers. Some people take their clothes off. They're cooling, and they're not knowing why they're doing this, but physiologically they're heating up. They've heated up about as hot as they're going to get for the night. We're very temperature sensitive in sleep. So you wake up. And if you have a racing mind on top of that, it's even easier to do that, right? I mean, your temperature wakes you up, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you go, poof, all this stuff's in my life, and then it comes right back to you. But you were in a deep sleep at some point, not enough, but you were there. So does that help you understand the reasons people get up at 3, roughly?
Yeah, I actually, it's so common. Um,
Yeah, because everybody heats up at 3 o'clock.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody does. Yeah,
everybody.
temperature
Um,
changes. Yeah.
I just, we were told, like I was told for the last 10, 15 years, is just go downstairs and try to read a book and maybe that'll make you fall asleep if you're, now I'm sure you have better tips than that. Um,
Yeah. So
because
let's
not
talk.
when you're going through a type of,
Sure.
you said it when it's all anxiety and everything's coming back at you. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, when you're in this type of situation, so you wake up at 3 and maybe if you weren't in this type of situation, you might go back easy. But sometimes you get up at 3 and you're like, the brain starts going, oh,
Mm-hmm.
and you start
Yeah.
getting,
Right. So you got two problems with waking up, right? You've got the temperature issue
mhm,
that's physiologic, right? It's part of you. It's who you are. And then you've got the psychological aspect of sleep that's coming at you too, right? Is that correct?
yeah.
At the same time, some of that had been put to rest while you were asleep. The brain, when you're out, you're out. An hour earlier, somebody could have woken you up or shook you a little bit, and you would have went, oh, I'm drowsy. I mean, you were in that sleep cycle, deep sleep cycle, and you weren't awake. And your brain wasn't engaged in racing that. You know how people get up sometimes and they don't know where they're at. That's that deep sleep cycle that people are in, and they can't get out of it quick because the brain hasn't focused in the proper brainwave yet. It's still in that deep sleep brainwave. And so, it takes a while to get that straightened up. Then when it jumps back into the daytime brainwave, which is called beta, now you're awake.
So that makes perfect sense why we all, is it a myth or is it truth that you get most of your best sleep at the beginning?
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
Myth.
Okay. See?
Yeah, all your best sleep is done from about midnight to about 3 to 4 in the morning. That's your quality sleep. You go through a series of, and a lot of people have looked this up on the internet or whatever. They think they know how they're managing their sleep, but they're really not. But you go through these cycles of sleep, and they're about 90 minutes long. And you go through light sleep for most of that cycle, and then you go into a deep sleep, and then you go into REM sleep, and you go more deep sleep in the first cycle and a little less REM sleep. So you might dream a little bit early in the night, but not very much. You won't know it. And then you go to the second 90-minute cycle, same thing. Light sleep, then a little bit more deep sleep, and a little bit more REM sleep. Then you go in that third cycle, and let's say we have 4 90-minute cycles. Some people have 5. What happens is the deep sleep gets shorter, light sleep stays about the same, the deep sleep gets shorter, and the REM sleep gets longer. So that's why you remember dreams a lot of times when you get up in the morning. You'll go, hey, I was having a dream, and I don't remember it, but I was having this dream. Well, your REM cycle is longer later in the night, in 4 to 6, and your deep sleep is the core of the night, 12 to, let's say, 4. And again, these are variable numbers for everybody. Sometimes it's 3:30, sometimes it's 3:31, 3:32. It's just, these are just averages I'm using, but the numbers are, roughly what I'm averaging out for you. So that's how you go through cycles, and you have to have them all. You cannot skip one cycle without having repercussion.
Well, that's the key word that you said, right? Because I'm just thinking back to my first divorce days and that, and thinking, oh, I had a lot of decisions to make and a lot of stuff to figure out, and probably not on much sleep. And so
Yeah,
when you said
and some of those
repercussions,
decisions were probably great decisions. Just because you're a tough person, you could push through it. And again, women are tougher than men as a rule. Some of them weren't good decisions because you were probably confused and tired and you couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on, and you had a short fuse. Your mood was different. This all is affected by sleep. Your mood, your elevation, your decision making, your ability to not get sick. Your immune system ramps up during deep sleep, not REM sleep. So if you're purposely shorting out deep sleep, you're more likely to catch a cold or get the sniffles or just don't feel good. That's the stage of sleep that regenerates you. So that part of that sleep, we just can't miss. You can miss it, but you pay price for it. We always do. We can't not pay a price for sleep deprivation. There's a price to pay.
What's interesting is in my divorcing client, but also my grief clients, there's a lot of sickness after, right? Like you said, colds and flus and stuff, but I think it can get even more serious if it continues, correct?
Sure. I've had people, I had a 30-year-old male that had sleep disorders, apnea, and all kinds of sleeping disorders, insomnia at early age, 18, 19, 20, and he had quadruple bypass before he was 30.
Oh.
Because he forced himself with his job to not get enough sleep, which he thought he had to have that job, right? He chose to have that job. He chose not to sleep. And at 30, it crashed in on him. Now, some people that doesn't happen to. Some people, they're 40. Some people don't have it happen till they're 60, 70. But one of the leading causes of Alzheimer's is sleep deprivation. So do we have a lot of Alzheimer's in our society today, Karen?
Yes, we do.
Do we have a lot of dementia in our society today? Do you
Yes, we
see
do.
people that are older going through divorces that have a really problem with sleep recollection and things of that nature?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get stressed, do they have more?
Yes.
Yeah, because they're short sleeping. So they're not regenerating.
So this gets me, we had talked about this previously, is, I said to you, I find it really frustrating, right? Like we are inundated with make sure you eat the salads, the protein, the diet, make sure you go to the gym or do your walks, make sure you're socially engaged, right? That's also a very important aspect. But we've talked about the fact that sleep doesn't get the same attention, but it matters even to me more important than all the other things.
Well, it is, but it's de-emphasized by society. And that goes back to the people who control our society with money. So how that works is when you read about a successful person, financially successful person, right? It's usually someone, and I don't mean to beat on anybody or talk about anybody, but let's just use Elon Musk as an example. He's just one of the most successful people I've ever heard about, read, know, whatever. He's just massively successful. I love what he does, but he also can live off 4 hours sleep. So what they don't know and what people don't know is he has this gene that allows him to do that. Very, very rare are there Elon Musk in our society, right? So when that information goes out that I can do this on 4 hours sleep, and if you're going to do what I do, you got to get 4 hours sleep. So what happens is money drives the train, right? And, I can get by on 4 hours sleep. People say that all the time. That's a real common thing. It's a myth, but it's common. And that's common thought. So sleep gets put back in the burner, back in the back seat, because you eat, you'll get up and have breakfast or whatever, even though you didn't have your sleep. But sleep is job one of everything.
You had mentioned that there's like, you're talking about Elon Musk and hardly, he's what, like 2% of the world that can do that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they all have that gene. I do not know that. I just know from reading about him and reading about some other successful people at that level, they have the ability to be able to live on 4 hours sleep, and that's rare. That's super rare. That's like somebody that just put other people in those categories that have something that no one else has that they can do that no one else can do, mm-hmm. And that's a rare thing. But also that becomes sort of the standard of thought for the public because everybody reads the newspapers and everybody reads the news and then everybody blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, this myth is real, right? Because it's been propagated that way. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. But, you had talked about there's like 4 to 5 different types of sleepers. Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're 4 to 5. What do you mean by that?
Well, like some people do better in the mornings. Some
Oh,
people can be night owls.
Yeah, we are all different. What I mean by that is we are all different sleepers. Everybody's built differently in that regard. So there are what we call chronotypes of people. Chronotypes are people who live by the clock certain ways, right? There are what we call night owls, right? You've heard that, night owls, and some people call them something else. Those are people that do their best functioning late at night, whatever that is, 11 to 3 or whatever, right? And they live on a different clock. Those are people, those are chronotypes, those are real people. There's a lot of them. You just don't know your chronotype. What we do as sleep specialists is we have questionnaires and stuff. You can go online and look it up and figure out what kind of chronotype you are. Then there's a bear chronotype. That's a person who, doesn't like to get up to 10 o'clock. Like a bear, they just, I can't get going till 10 o'clock. That's a bear, and then there's a dolphin type person they can go to bed late, they can go to bed early. They've always got one eye open, they can make that flex, and that's okay. These are all okay things. But what you've got to do if you want to determine where you're going with this is you have to determine your chronotype. What type of sleeper are you? And then the questionnaires are directly get you to that. And then once you understand what type of chronotype you are, then you set your circadian rhythm to that chronotype, the way that you live your life, and it makes your sleep easier.
Yeah, I think about awareness, right? Like I had no idea until you and I talked that I'm like, I never knew that I could be a dolphin, a bear, or whatever the other 3 are.
You can, and you don't know. And so let's say you have a job that works second shift, and that's your job, and you've done that for years. But also, let's say that you're a morning person, you're a lark. You like to get up in the morning, and you like to get going at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? You like to do your thing. You're most productive at 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock. But you got a job that goes from 2 o'clock to midnight. So how productive are you going to be? How efficient are you going to be? And how fatigued are you going to be? Because you're going against your genetic composition, the way you're built. You're actually pushing yourself against your genes. And that's real. That's real in our society. That's how tough we are. But what happens is, because you do this day in and day out, year in and year out, or maybe even stress, maybe it's divorce, or maybe life's life, right? It just goes on. Life comes at you all kinds of ways. But what happens is that you do that day in and day out, year in and year out, and these genes that are getting pushed change. They mutate. Mutations happen every day in all of us. Some people get cancers with it. Some people don't get anything with it, right? But it happens all the time. And when you short sleep, or you don't get yourself into the right rhythms of sleep, then those genes have a high incidence of mutation and activation. So that's why you see people get really sick. These genes are mutating. They're doing their thing on the negative side of it, not the positive side. They're not staying quiet. The good ones are getting quiet. The bad ones are coming alive. And these bad genes get activated, and they stay activated. And that leads to heart disease and cancers and strokes and all this. How many times have you heard somebody that's been through stress and they've had a stroke? That's probably one of the greatest fears of people, right? Is to have a stroke and have one side paralyzed in some way. Well, most of the time, they're short sleeping, and the body has made a change in the brain some way, and it's shorted it out, and the mutation has occurred, and then all of a sudden they have a stroke. Or not just that severe. It could be just another real common problem with short sleepers are skin issues. You see people that are short sleepers and they have rashes, eczema, just all kinds of skin issues. Some of them are weird. I'm not a skin doctor, but I see skin issues on people. What happened there? Well, I got this divorce, and then my skin started breaking out. I don't know if you heard that before or not. No, I'm not, in your world. So then, well, why did that happen? Well, you short sleep, your immune system goes down because you don't get immune regeneration if you miss deep sleep. It doesn't happen. So the immune system gets knocked on its feet. And so the genes that are probably weakest link in you are your skin genes. They're maybe your weakest link. And so they get activated, and you get pimples on your face, or, skin problems, all kinds of different skin. Skin is probably the most susceptible to this in the beginning, because it's the largest organ. So it's and the most vascularization, and it's also very susceptible to immune dysfunction.
So if you think of our society, social media, TV, we don't go to bed like we did in evolutionary time, right? We don't go to bed when the sun sets and gets up when the sun rises. So that has also affected our sleep patterns, correct?
Correct. We live in a society today that is well lit, right? I mean, you can go anywhere, and you don't even have to take a flashlight after a few minutes, right? I mean, you can just sort of see the street lights and live, or car lights. And all that is not the way that our brain is designed. With all these rhythms and all these things that we've talked about, that's our brain and how it's designed, all the things that we've been talking about. But one of the things that's occurred in the last 100 years is the fact that electricity came into our world and lit it up. And it lights it up day and night. And I tell people, every week I see patients, and, they'll watch TV at 10 or 11, or they'll watch their phone, or they'll listen to something, And all that wasn't available till we got electricity. So electricity changed the world when it comes to sleep. And that was about 100, well over 100 years ago now. And it's just doing nothing but pouring on heavier and heavier and heavier all the time. You can find ways to stay awake about any way you want today, right? And then what people do is they have these habits of watching whatever, and I'm not just beating up cell phones and all that, but whatever it is that they're created in their mind to not sleep. Then they start supplementing it with something else to take place. They still want the habits, but they want to supplement the sleep with whatever. And that can be pills, that can be any kind of medication to try to supplement that, but not change anything over here. I just want to add this in and get both the best of both worlds, And honestly, I'm not a purely holistic doctor. I don't disbelieve in medications. I think medications have their place for people. If without them, I don't think we would be able to manage a lot of our life in different ways. So in modern culture. So I don't mind writing the prescriptions, but I also want the patients to have habitual cognitive changes in conjunction with that, if that's the choice that we have, because the cognitive changes are permanent. And then the other changes with the medications can be phased out over time.
Yeah, sorry. So what I'm hearing is so we do kind of like an educate sleep, like
Yeah.
like in a way, like educate you on how to sleep, as well as if you're on medication, whether it's prescription, because you and I talked about that. Like for some people, it's necessary just to get some type of sleep, correct?
Correct. If let's say that you're going through a divorce or a life-changing event, and it's a crisis, that crisis is going to change your sleep. And you're going to make a choice, even though you don't sound like it, you are making a choice that crisis is going to change your sleep. You're going to change. And during that time frame, you're going to not get enough sleep. So how do you do that? Well, I think you do that with some medication to help that patient get through that crisis. I think that's important. And then but the patient doesn't go through the crises without the cognitive changes occurring with it. And that's another fee, that's another charge, that's another procedure, another whole ball of wax. But if you don't do one without the other, then you're just going to be on meds your whole life. Just
Yeah,
it's
because
just
I could.
the way it works.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I can think about everybody that, and I want to talk to you a bit about this too. Is everyone goes to the drugstore, they get the melatonin, the magnesium, just anywhere on the shelves, right? And you had said to me that, and I want people to be aware when they're listening that the stuff that we're buying, that it's everywhere, isn't actually the right melatonin we should be taking anyways, correct?
That is correct. I don't know if my wife's here or not with that, but yeah, that is very correct. Melatonin is a liquid in our brain. Okay, it's dripped from the pineal gland of the brain, and it's like a slow faucet drip. So let's explain a little bit about melatonin, what it is. It's a hormone, natural, in your body that's dripped in the pineal gland, and it's set to the circadian rhythms of the sun. So as the sun sets or light goes off, if it doesn't go off, it doesn't drip. So it's set to the rhythms, and you start dripping melatonin. And think of melatonin as being the starter gun in a race. It just fires the gun. Time to go to sleep. But it doesn't participate in the race. It's not that. It just helps you go to sleep. If you wake up again at night, melatonin also helps you go back to sleep, fires the gun. If you don't have a melatonin that's liquid, that's in a water-soluble format, that can happen with a pill. And that can happen with a powder. It can't happen because you have to have the brain only drips 0.3 milligrams of melatonin per drop. It only takes a few microdosing of melatonin to work. Any more than that can actually have a rebound effect against you. So when you take a pill of melatonin, it's 5 milligrams, and that's pretty common. 3, they try to get it close to 3 if they can, because that's sort of the ideal amount over the course of the night that you need. It drips 0.3 to up about 3 milligrams a night. That's it. That's all you need. Well, where do you buy that? If you take a 5 milligram pill in your tummy or powder, how do you know where it goes? How much do you know you get? How fast is it bioabsorbed? You don't know. So what Zalise has done, a company that I'm a medical advisor on, and Jenny sells the products, is they have created a formulation that allows the melatonin to be water soluble. So what it does is and they've done a Mayo Clinic study with it, and an NIH study. And so what it does is, it's a small company, but the bioavailability of that product to get through the blood-brain barrier is somewhere around less than an hour. So you know that if you take it sublingually, it just drops. All of our patients call them drops. I want the drops. They start on them, they don't stop on them, because they know that drip is important. It's not something you're taking that's not part of you. Melatonin is your hormone. Right? It's yours. You don't have it. Stress stops it. Snoring stops it. Apnea stops it. Age stops it. There's a lot of things that stop it. So that's why I think, in my opinion, melatonin supplementation with the right melatonin is super important. And it's not hard to do. It's a few drops. I take it every night. My wife takes it every night. We have for years, almost 8 and 9 years. And if you wake up, you take it again, because the drip is you still need the drip, right? The starter gun needs to fire again when you wake up.
So would you recommend that? Would that be one of the tools you would recommend?
Yeah, when you do treatment, that's one of the recommended protocols, is to use Dream. It's called Dream, Ultra Dream. Jenny she has that. And it's a wonderful technology. Now, the reason you don't hear about it is because it's a small company, and it's a direct sale company. It's a very small company out of Texas, the United States. But they also have the technology. That's the key. The technology is the key. It's not a pill. It's not a powder. It's the technology. The technology drives the product. So the other thing that we do in our protocols that I think works very well is we use anandamide. You know what anandamide is? Anandamide is a neurotransmitter in the brain that is set on your circadian rhythms, and it goes down at night and it elevates up in the morning to wake you up. And anandamide is the chemical neurotransmitter of the brain that controls your endorphins, your epinephrine, all the other chemicals of the brain. It's the main controlling neurotransmitter. So we use Zalise's water-soluble cannabinoid CBD products because they increase the amount of anandamide in the brain at the proper time. But the same technology. It's the same technology. So they are able to make that very same bioavailability.
Thanks for listening to part 1 with sleep doctor, Dr. Todd. Don't miss part 2, where we dive deeper into the sleep strategies to help you rest, recover, and cope during divorce. Thank you for joining today's discussion with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guest. If you're finding value in our podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel at Divorce Workshop. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For a comprehensive divorce guide, check out our Just Separated workbook on Amazon worldwide. This workbook covers everything from emotions and co-parenting to finances, legal insights, and recovery, a must-have for anyone navigating separation or divorce.